Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I know it's a time that everyone wants to sleep, to go off, and have some refreshments, but we'll make it very interesting for you. This is a topic that a lot of us have thought a lot over the past days, because for us who are in marketing field, actually, this is one of the things that are a bit tricky for us to take on as marketers, because we are always in the thought that AI is very important in marketing campaigns, right? And in the whole of the marketing journey for our customers. But at the same time, how do we make sure that we humanize the content of all these AI-generated information? There is so much AI tools around that marketers can now use, and even auto-generated contents. Let's say, for example, emails are now automated. You have chatbots. You have ChatGPT, which is a very hot topic earlier. And this is, no doubt, they have given us a lot of advantages. But then the human element of it is kind of lost in space, isn't it? It's not gone are the days when humans are talking to humans. It's now bots talking to humans, right? And you don't even know the difference at times. So this afternoon, we're going to tackle that. How do we strategize a checklist that will make it very human for us as we talk to consumers? And with me this afternoon are three highly experienced professionals in the field. We have Brian Yeung, Alec Junaid, and Rami Chebaby, and I will let them introduce themselves.
So I'm Brian Yeung, and I represent a consultancy called Brandstorm Communications, an award-winning agency specialized in content marketing, purpose-driven communications.
Okay, my name is Rami Chebaby. I am the co-founder of Mindflares. Mindflares is a global user experience design and research and everything related to strategy.
My name is Alec. I'm a performance creative strategist. This role may seem a little bit ambiguous, but let's just go tackle each keyword. So performance, I'm able to pull data across all platforms, whether it's advertising platforms, website, or even native platforms, and be able to integrate those data into the creative content creation process.
And my name is Joanne. I am originally from the Philippines, but I've been in the Gulf for over 14 years, 3 years in Qatar and 11 years in the UAE. And I'm in the healthcare sector. I've been managing brands, big brands like Burchill Hospital, NMC Healthcare, and now I am with the largest government group of hospitals, which is SEHA, and I'm managing the brand called Salma Rehabilitation Hospital. So to start off, I'd like to give this first question to Alec, right? There was a question, or there was a talk earlier about having the marketing landscape. One of the speakers earlier in the panel was saying that marketing is essentially still the basic foundation of it, right? When you talk about marketing, whether it's AI, you put AI into the ingredient, you still have to make sure that you understand the audience. And as a creative strategist, as a brand strategist, how do you make sure that you understand the desires, the emotions, the aspirations of your target audience so that you can humanize the content?
Well, it's important to understand that marketing has been around since 1500 BC, during the Mesopotamian era. So it's always been, and I'm a firm believer that marketing is more art than science. And I know it sounds cliche, but obviously, as years went by, marketing has slowly shifted to a more scientific route. But with that said, in order for you to set yourself apart from other marketers is basically going back to the basics. So this starts with proper market research, proper customer research. So how do you go about customer and market research? First off, you have to establish your customer avatars. Customer avatars, I mean understanding your ideal audience. And at the same time, you also have to look at your negative avatars, or those customers that you don't really necessarily want to deal with because they may be a little bit too expensive to acquire. The lifetime value is not that high. So why am I saying all of these things? Because all those information are essential in order for you to create the perfect content that will hit home with your target audience. And even in some cases, tug their heartstrings. So you have to be in touch with reality. It's not the product developers or your CEO who will tell you exactly the benefits of your products. It's actually your real life customers. And so now I'm talking about benefits. Now let's talk about pain points. So as marketers, we are also problem solvers, right? So how do you identify the problems? What I do, and this is my rule of thumb, I always look at review sites. I've dealt with e-commerce businesses for quite some time now. If you're dealing with Shopify, look at reviews. Do a customer, what's the term here? Customer sentiment research. What I mean by customer sentiment is it's basically a KPI indicating how customers perceive your brand. So what you do is you use an Excel file and basically pull all the benefits, all the features, all the benefits and the pain points of what your real customers are saying. And with that, you'll be able to utilize those things that you pulled, the information that you pulled, into your content and making sure that your content it hits home with your target audience.
That's a very good point. In fact, in a lot of brand communications, in a lot of brand messaging, we have to always remember the pain points because sometimes we are just so absorbed in sharing what are the brand strengths. But sometimes we forget there are a lot of pain points that we need to address as well. So I think that's a very good point that you had to highlight on the target, knowing your target audience better.
The previous speaker pointed out in this phrase, listen to your customers. We always look at the numbers. I'm a metrics guy. I'm also a nerd. But at the same time, you have to hear what they're saying. You can go so far as to go scour the internet, look at comments on YouTube, what they're saying about your products as well as your competitors, and being able to leverage that information to put yourself in an advantage apart from your competitors.
Right, that's good. Now, let's talk about purpose-driven communications. This is something that is gaining momentum in a lot of ESG, or environmental, social, and governance companies. And how important is it? Brian, you are in this field. You very well know what's the trend. How important is humanized content in purpose-driven communications?
And I think there's certain trend that push the ESG ahead, and also there are certain factors that affect like how company oppose ESG. Because at the very beginning, like company do ESG for the reporting, for investment, but nowadays the customer also changing. I think it was briefly mentioned in the morning that customer and brand the interaction is different. In the past, it might be based on the product, and then later maybe because of the brand. But now they talk about the shared value that the customer want to support the company because of they buy in their value. So in a recent report from PwC, 60% of customer in Asia Pacific prefer products with ESG implication, for example, environmentally friendly or for social good. And the point is that like ESG is very hardcore, that is all about lumber, and the customer don't really want to listen to it. So that is how humanized content fit in. But then like in the world of marketing, we always try to pretend to listen to the customer, we can ask ChatGPT, I did that too. I asked ChatGPT to give me 4 different versions of social media copy and see which one looked the best. But then like humanized content, I would say like the major change is that like who is going to tell the story? Because in the past, the marketer would just say like, oh, we find a video cool to do a beautiful video film about the brand, about the product and so on. But nowadays in all our campaign with digital clients, we actually get the customer involved. For example, like we held literally just 2 weeks ago, we have one major real estate developer to sort of like promote their doing good for the society. And you can see all the building they built in Hong Kong. But then if you just make a video, oh, how this building transforming city, it will be very boring. So what we did is that we invite our audience to submit like multimedia content, and then we make a digital art exhibition featuring people, their own personal story happening in those building and neighborhood. And that is what we say the humanized content, because it's not just the brand pretend to be human, because like, yeah, just one single voice. Having humanized content is how to have multiple voices in your brand narrative, I would say.
That's a very interesting insight. Multiple voices coming together, personal stories, that makes it very powerful as a story for any brand out there. Now, Rami, you're in omni-channel platforms, and I'm sure there's a lot of talk about how do you humanize content in omni-channel platforms. It's a very complicated route for any brand journey, but can you just share us a few insights? How do you make sure that conversational language is there and is key in making sure that the whole journey is more humanized?
Thank you. The omni-channel, I will tackle the digital part of omni-channel. The omni-channel could be, let's say, a web administration. It could be a mobile application related to an agent, related to a user. And each one has different user types. Before making them as persona which is a fictive person, in order to make sure that the conversation is good, there is an attraction between both parties, they should know each other. So we start by knowing the customer. Like Alex said, listening to the customer. Before, let's start by knowing the customer. And how to know the customer. We should know the culture, we should know location, age. Okay, I will go into details, but the global idea is to know what he wants and what he not want now only, what he will need in the future. So this is the first part. The second part is the provider, which is, for example, an application. If I'm tackling a user for youth, so I need to make sure that all the terminology, the user experience writing, the wording they made a point for these people. Let's say I have a phrase, if they are millennials or Gen Z or Gen X, they differ. Okay, and in a universal application, they have the global wording, which is more neutral. So on the first part, we discussed, the audience. On the second part, we have those channels. How can we humanize this? If we speak their language, we speak like they know. And all of this has a one recap. You know it, you can hear it. When you are in a, let's say, discussion, and they say, I like this application. It's easy. It took me 30 seconds. So it's behind those minutes, those seconds, they have many layers and checklists. We attack seamlessly, and that's why you can have a humanized content in this.
That's a very good point. When I was studying omnichannel as a brand myself, I was trying to figure out how do you make it, because it's very easy to create a content across different platforms, but it's all automated, right? And for a lot of probably the later generations, the Gen X, the Gen Zs, they understand that these are bots talking to them, right? So as marketers, it's a big challenge. How do you make it consistent? How do you make it relevant? How do you make it timely, right? And I think what you have shared to us is something that is enlightening, because it boils down again to knowing your customer, listening to them, and making sure that you structure it in such a way that the buzzwords, right, will actually hit home.
Yes, true,
right?
True.
Okay.
You should know. That's why maybe we'll talk another time about personalization of this.
Right. And to that point, let's go a bit on the technical aspect of advertising. And this is really because there is so much content and concept that we could actually do around, how do we humanize this amidst the plethora of AI-generated content. So as a creative strategist, Alec, tell us, how do you approach your creative concepts to make sure that the contents are actually humanized?
Okay. That topic in itself is probably going to take me 30 minutes, so I'll try to make everything concise. Let's do a real case study here. I've dealt with a client, and they're asking me to produce new material for their upcoming campaign. So where do I start? So that is where you start to crunch the numbers. You look at the past performers. Where do you look? Exactly. You look at link click-through rates, ad click-through rates. If it's in video format, you look at the hook and hold rates. For those who aren't familiar with hook and hold rates, it's basically the number of through plays, like for instance, 3-second through plays. If your video is, let's say, 30 seconds long, and look at the number of views and as it pertains to the duration of the video in relative to the number of reach and impressions. So again, I don't like this topic because it's a little bit too technical. But again, the idea here is identify the past performers, take all the elements that you would consider that you think you can implement to your new creatives in order for your new creatives to perform. And with that said, it's constant A/B testing. Marketing is not magic, unfortunately. For business owners, they set unrealistic standards. But me, I always keep a testing mindset. What I mean by that is making sure to pit one message against another, see which type of messaging works for a specific target audience. And it's not just messaging. You can go so far as to, A/B test colors, whatever it is. You can A/B test whether this ad can resonate more with a male audience or a female audience. So it's a lot of A/B testing involved. And with that said, you have to set basic parameters as in accordance to your target KPIs. I really don't like this topic. But again, the goal here is to make sure that you go through the tedious part of really understanding what works and what doesn't work for your brand or the brands you're dealing with.
Right. I think we are back to the basic, that we have to really understand the audience and then from there create the brand journey. And the A/B testing works a lot of times, even in the olden days. When I started my marketing profession, there were no chat GPTs, there were no chatbots, right? Mm-hmm. There were no AI tools. So we're in that basic bedrock stone of marketing. And I think what we forget is that nowadays it's still the same. It's just that we're using new tech to help us in marketing, right?
As advertisers, these AI tools or whatever technological advancement you can use to your arsenal, they're merely tools at the end of the day. It's really about being a great marketer is about having an empathetic mind and being able to properly communicate your product features and benefits to your clients and customers, and also the ability to hear them out, hear their, sentiment.
Now, going back to purpose-driven communications, and we're talking about creative formats, Brian. To that point, I'd like to know, what are the creative formats that you have done in the past for purpose-driven communications in the B2B clients that you have served?
I would say engagement marketing, because I know marketer love lumber. We just talk about KPI and blah, blah, blah. But then for consumer change, I like behavioral change. One video won't change their behavior. We always remember what happened to us, what we experienced, more than what we watch and what we read. So I think for marketers nowadays should also think about the qualitative aspect of your campaign. So for example, like we did a campaign for a French nonprofit organization, and then they basically want to do fundraising in Asia and also in the UAE. And we help them to articulate the fundraising exercise. And traditionally, and back then it was the COVID time as well. And then traditionally, like we would do like fundraising dinner, charity auction, all this kind of standard thing. But with COVID, everything under like a restriction. So there are some social distancing measure and so on. So we think of some different component to run the campaign. A, to get the money from the donors, and B, also spread the message across. Because like from a purpose-driven communication point of view, it's not just about how many people you have reached, but how you achieve the objective. Even it might not be business related, but also fundraising is a kind of like commercial in a way, that like objective. So what we did is that like we did like SDG games. I don't know whether you have heard about, it's a card games. So it's a kind of card games that to teach people about different like UN Sustainable Development Goals. And back then, because it was at least in Hong Kong back then, it was still under lockdown, and then basically like we don't have strict lockdown, but we cannot fly overseas. So basically parents have nothing to do with the kids. So a lot of parents want to do something meaningful to their kids. They join the SDG game section and pay as a donation to the non-profits. And we also organize this kind of SDG game training workshop for the business, for the HR department, that if you want to improve the SDG understanding of your employee, the organization can help you to run the trial. And then with the card game, basically, the company buy courses from the nonprofit because they are at the frontier of doing SDG-related work. At the same time, they can also tick their box of internal training. So I think, like from my experience, I would recommend always to think about what is really the end goal to run this campaign, instead of just having a lot of reach, a lot of view, but then are they really acting, making an action in response to your marketing objective? I think that is the most important thing, yeah.
That's a very good point. In fact, in one of the conferences that I attended, one of the speakers was telling the audience that, you know, if you don't have any use for the technology, you don't even need to buy it, right? Because a lot of marketers tend to be, okay, I have to be updated, I have to get this, I have to know this technology, I have to apply this to the brand. But you know, at the end of the day, do you really need it? Do you really need to have those technologies? Because what you're saying is you have to have the end goal in mind. And from that, you kind of backtrack. What are the technologies that I need to cater to this end goal?
May I also add one point is that, like, you know, the digital platform provider, they all love marketers because we pay for their platform. So all the analytical reports we get from the platform are usually orchestrated in a way that make us want to pay more. So I think it is important for us to really assess the whole pipeline and see if certain advertising or pay component is really necessary. Yeah.
Right. Good point. Now, let's go back to omnichannels, where it's a very interesting topic because a lot of brand marketers are using that right now. How important is personalized recommendations in digital communication? And do you think this is a slant towards humanizing content?
Okay, you mean recommendation? Yeah. Okay, let's get to the real world. And you're talking to someone, and this someone gives you advices, and this someone doesn't know you. So either he can hit 1 in a million because he doesn't know you, either if he knows you a little bit, he can hit more. If he knows you more, he can hit more. That's the same thing in recommendation. If you want to attract people, we should find first their pain points. What are their pain points? I mean digitally and non-digitally. So if I know their pain points, I know what they need, what they want, I can address more what I want to say to them. Especially if I know their culture. Two people have the same pain points, will react differently in different culture. Let's say in the Gulf versus someone in, let's say, in the States. So each one has a way to express his need. And let's give a real example. In the Gulf or in the MENA region, they are more emotional versus, let's say, Europe, at least the North. So if you want to talk to them, if you want to personalize your recommendation, you should insert some emotional language, some emotional touch point that he think that you are talking to him, not or talking to her, not talking to a general audience. And this is very important, especially in as a simple, let's say, flow in an application, let's say in an onboarding or paying or let's say choosing. If you talk like he's someone you know and that you are recommending something depending on the talks before, the AI or the machine learning or what we have data for you, it's very good to address a pain point and not to label this person and not to bombard this user with lots and lots of ads on the same topic. So if you are seamlessly grabbing his attention and giving away a good recommendation, he will come again. He will say to other people, let's try this, go and try this. They are easy, they are ongoing, they recommend this for me, and he will be happy. He will be the ambassador of this platform or application.
That's a good point. In fact, when we talk about personalized recommendations, I cannot help but remember Google, for example, right? The moment you Google one word and then you scroll your Facebook, wow, lo and behold, what you have Googled will appear as a sponsored ad in your Facebook. Yeah. And I think this is one of the, hurrah and, hurrah times for marketers. But then again, is this something that kind of penetrates more than just, it can be intrusive for some users, right? Thinking that Google records everything that they actually search for, that we as users search for, and that is where the privacy issue comes in, right?
And by the way, you can search for it. The sponsored ad on Google have less click-through rate than because you are okay. They are targeting you, but maybe they are not the best. Maybe they are not. I don't know why they sponsored their ads. Maybe they should be in a search, the real search. That's the point you can tackle.
Right. So personal recommendations they indeed make it more humanized, right? But to a certain extent, there's still a school of thought that kind of thinks that the privacy, issue is being intruded,
and especially when it tackles as well, for example, healthcare, right, insurance, yeah, hospitals. Something personal. So you cannot throw out a recommendation. You should pinpoint, the real word should be in its place for this person.
Right. And that we will go back to that part where there are differences in culture and religion in different regions, and we have to be as marketers sensitive to that as well, right? But before that, let's move on and talk about the balance of using AI and humanizing it. And this is, I think, the crux of the whole discussion. How do we leverage AI and make it humanized as we move along and use these tools? So that's for you, Alec.
Well, as someone who's worked with and led 3 content writing teams, let's just say we've just recently accepted the fact that, in order to attain efficiency and pump out content at a pretty rapid rate, you should start using AI. That's a given, but at the same time, we don't want to be out of touch and be far away from our original objective, which is to, again, what I mentioned earlier, hit home to our target audience and go so far as to tug their heartstrings. So how do you humanize AI-generated content? It's not as easy as saying, hey, ChatGPT, prepare the website content for this website, and then you think you're so smart by adding a little phrase there, make that sound more humanized. That doesn't cut it. So, which brings me back to the research aspect of this entire thing. You do market research, and then you do customer research. You understand the pain points, you identify them, and then you feed all that information into your AI tool. And right now, I'm using ChatGPT as well. So it's not just a simple one-liner prompt. I usually feed AI with all the information it needs, and then I make sure to make my prompts very specific. And obviously, I'm not just going to simply copy and paste what was generated. I have to, add a certain element of humanity into the generated content, whether it's ad copy, website copy, blog copy. So whatever the case may be, you have to add the human touch. And you also have to make sure that you run everything by an AI checker. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with AI checker. It's the bane of my existence because as someone who also handles SEO, we submit guest posts to certain websites, and these webmasters, more often than not, they reject the submitted posts because they tag certain articles as AI-generated content. So how do you circumvent that? Well, we got tools like Killbot, DeepL. You use those tools these are simple paraphrasing tools, so you don't have to go back from scratch and, build the entire content on your own, because that defeats the purpose of using AI. So again, you beat AI by using AI. So my advice here has been more practical than theoretical because it's what's relevant, and the stuff I'm saying right now may not be relevant in the next, 1 to 2 years. So again, that's where constant research come into play.
That's interesting when you say you beat AI by using AI.
Fight fire with fire. That's what they say.
So is there any way we could actually put human in between? But definitely the human took over.
The one doing the prompts,
Yes.
bare minimum.
Yes, then submit it again to AI for further optimization. So I think that's a trend that we have to embrace. I think as marketers, what we have to realize, it's like, when a new, say, flu shot is invented, right? You don't shy away from it. In fact, you don't, say, I'm not going to get, sick. But I think a challenge for us marketers is how to embrace technology so that it will complement our work as marketers. And this is where I have always been hearing the thought, think globally, but act locally. And this has something to do with omnichannel, Rami, and this question is for you. So what do you think are the key elements, right, that we need to keep as a list in order to localize the content? Because there are different cultures, there are different beliefs, values in every region. So how do we localize content such that it would still, be a tick in the humanizing content strategy?
Okay, this question will recap the two other questions, and I will make it like a checklist. The first is to know the customer. To know the customer and deep, let's say, the culture he's in. Even in the same culture, we have subcultures. The region he's in, what his interest, what his stereotypes, because the stereotypes is the majority. And this is done by user interview, not by assumptions. Assumptions is always leading to something else, not real. We should take some real personas, persons that we can create later on, personas, talk to them, because what they talk sometimes is not what they do. They speak something that is everyone know, which is like something like best practice. We don't need this. We should find what they need really. This is one. Two, the stakeholders, the objectives of the stakeholders, in order to meet the objectives of the stakeholders with the audience need or the user's needs. That's the main two things. Then comes tackling the pain points and finding solution for those pain points. If you find solution for those pain points, and one by one, not all of them, you can make like a learning curve with those users in order to understand how you can solve their problems, how you can touch, for example, if I am cold now and I need a jacket, I won't put lots of information about jacket and wool shirts and socks. I put this jacket. The second day, I will put something else, or the second week even. So if you do this as chronological, I think this is the best checklist to get an answer and to get those people as buyers and ambassadors, as I said before.
That's a good point. In fact, when I was in Qatar, then I moved to practice here in the UAE. I've seen there are a lot of, they're in the same region, right? But the pain points are different, right? The way that they deliver healthcare, for example, is very different from how we do it in Qatar and here in the UAE. And hence, the way we talk to our patients are also different. And I think what you have given as an example, you know, knowing the pain points, understanding your market, it really boils down to knowing your target audience and this basic marketing framework, right? So I'd like to know at this point, as a purpose-driven communicator, Brian, is there any gatekeeper list that we have to actually remember and keep in mind if we want to avoid any PR crisis? Because this is very, very common, right? Because there are a lot of contents that are automated, right? And sometimes if marketers are not careful, they will just post it without checking what's the sensitivity of the region about it, right? They would just create, for instance, I was working with an agency in the past, and we're creating an advertisement about dermatology. And we know very well that when you talk about dermatology, you show body parts, right? Skin, elbows, underarms, right? And that's the global thing. But locally, there's regulatory, the Department of Health regulation that for us, marketers, we cannot expose certain parts of the body of a woman. We cannot show the chest area. We cannot show this area. So we cannot show the knees, right? So if it's an automated content, probably an advertisement that is created through ChatGPT, the bot would not do that, right? So how do you have this list, or is there any gatekeeper list that we have to take into account so that, we don't get into any PR crisis?
The rules are always very simple, but people still constantly forget about it. So I'm going to tell you the rules with one case study, how it really screw up. Then you will remember the rules. So the first one is authenticity. So like when we want to create humanized content, make sure it's based on real or authentic story, because one non-profit in Hong Kong, I'm not giving the name, but then it became a big PR crisis, is that they ask people to make donation to Africa. So they create like content such as like photo shooting of those like beneficiary, and then also every year they will get one letter from that beneficiary in return. And then one day, just one donor tried to find that African beneficiary from Instagram and realized that he's driving Ferrari and he's smoking as well. And then the donor was shocked. I make the donation and he's living a posh life in Africa. Then he messaged the person and say, hey, are you the same person? And he said, I'm just a professional model. So I did the photo shoot for money. I'm not even your beneficiary. And it became a big scandal. Every single donor of that organization asked for proof. Where did my money go? So that the number one rule is authenticity, and the other one is consent. Because we always, as I said at the very beginning, we love to get our audience involved. But do you know where the consent is? and what is the limit, because there is another school doing like fundraising exercise. So basically the school interview 4 or 5 young girls about their upbringing in school, about their adulthood, and make a documentary for fundraising. But and all of them gave consent when they were underage, and they forgot to ask them for their consent again after they become an adult. So one of the girls saw the movie on sale in public cinema, and she threatened to sue the producer. And she also, like every single audience boycott that particular movie. So the number 2 rules will be consents, and the very last one will be transparency. Because like nowadays, no matter you use AI tools or ChatGPT, whatever, and then everyone can also do the fact checking. Especially in communication, journalists are very well trained in detecting whatever that could be false. If you're using ChatGPT for content, good for you, but don't forget to do the fact checking. And then one crisis as a result of transparency is that there is one floating restaurant in Hong Kong used to be very famous, and then it moved to another country in open sea without disclosing its itinerary. And then the PR company refused to disclose the itinerary until it sunk. And then people thought, oh my God, it's sunk in the open sea. But actually it wasn't sunk, it was capsized. And the company is trying to deliberately make it sunk in the open sea for insurance. And it became another big scandal, and even with legal implication in this case. Yeah, so these are the 3 rules.
Right, so that's authenticity,
Transparency,
and
consent.
Consent. Those are very, very important in humanizing content to prevent PR crisis, right? So finally, I'd like to ask our panelists, if there is one thing that our audience will take home tonight, what's the best piece of advice that you could give them about humanizing content amidst the plethora of AI-generated contents that we see nowadays?
Okay, I'll go first. And apparently it's time's up, but okay.
No, it's okay. Can I give a short answer?
Let's just
We're
squeeze,
last 5
2
minutes,
more minutes
so
in.
that's fine.
And do take out the time to ask if anybody have any questions, so we can
Okay.
just have one question today.
Right.
Right, okay. Piece of advice. Let me give you an analogy. A lot of people love iced tea. Some, or more often than not, they like it hot, but nobody wants lukewarm tea. So as it pertains to messaging, you can't just dump all features, benefits, and pain points in a single piece. You have to be very specific. Otherwise, now we're talking about A/B testing. There's nothing to A/B test because there are too many variables involved. So again, be very specific. I'd much rather create 2 pieces of content with very different messaging and pit them against each other, and maybe give or take 2 to 3 weeks, I'll be able to identify what messaging works exactly for a specific brand.
Right. Thanks.
So think of tea.
Thanks, Alec. Rami?
One sentence.
One-liner.
She's looking at it.
She's looking. Okay. Let's not look at her. Okay.
Be genuine and relatable.
Thanks,
wow,
Rami.
I like that answer.
And Brian?
Also, I actually kind of like the theme of the conference, No Boundaries, because marketers are sometimes being constrained by all the jargon, all the trendy marketing buzz that limit our imagination on coming up with a really cool campaign. So I would say no boundaries. Yeah.
Thank
Great.
you so much. Before they set off, do anybody have any question? Any one person? No, I cannot see. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And if you are taking videos and pictures, do tag them, tag us on Marketing 2.0 Conference, and use the hashtag Marketing2CONF Conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's have a really big round of applause for them.